Well, welcome to this episode of the Botanical Medicine Study Course with me, your host and instructor, Stephanie Georgieff. Welcome to all new subscribers. A hearty thank you to all long-term subscribers, and a shout out to those of you coasting through the channel for the first time. Everyone is much appreciated. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, here we are at the time of the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. This year, on December 25th, it'll be one of the rare occurrences that Western Christmas coincides with the first night of Hanukkah. Some call the blending of these holidays Christ Hanukkah. I remember one year, many years ago, when Christmas, Hanukkah, and Ramadan all fell at the same time. I had a latke party to celebrate. Now, most of the foods associated with Hanukkah in the United States and Canada are actually quite Russian Polish. And because these communities were some of the first wonderful immigrant communities, these Jewish immigrant communities were from those regions. So that's why a lot of the Hanukkah foods are that way. So we want to make sure to be inclusive of all traditions taking place in these last days of December. So for this week's Herb of the Week, we will explore a tree and nut of walnut mainly because the walnut features prominently in many of the traditional Hanukkah foods. Now, there are several species of walnut. The European and Asian one, the Asian one is called Juglans regia, which means the royal nut of Jupiter. And this basically originated in Asia Minor. And the walnut from North American species is called Juglans nigra. And both of these plants, these wonderful, majestic trees, are part of the Eugalandiaceae family. And this is a plant family that's also known as the walnut family. And they're mostly trees, sometimes they're shrubs, and they're native, as I said, to the Americas, Eurasia, and Southeast Asia. Now, there are 10 genera in this Junglandaceae. My Latin pronunciation is not that stellar, I apologize. It has about 50 species, and there are commercially important nut-producing trees, which we know as walnut, pecan, and hickory. Now, the Persian walnut, which is also called Juglans regia, or the royal nut of Jupiter, is one of the major nut crops of the world. And walnut and hickory are also valuable timber trees, while pecan wood is also valued as cooking fuel. Now, when I was a garden docent at the now closed Copia American Center for Food, Wine, and the Arts in Napa, California, the edible gardens there had a wonderful grove filled with different nut trees, and it was sponsored by the California Nut Commission, which I found really amusing since the rest of the country thinks that people from California are a bunch of nuts. And I always wondered how the operator for this organization would answer the phone. But from what I can see, the Juglans regia and the Juglans nigra are very similar in terms of medicinal and nutritional value. In fact, if you just see the nut, you wouldn't know the difference as far as I can tell. And I've eaten both, and to me, they're identical. So there you go. It's a large deciduous tree, and it can be very tall. It can be anywhere from 30 to 80 feet tall, and it can be a very thick trunk, 6.5 feet in diameter. Now, the tallest accurately measured specimen is in the country of Georgia. And this is nearly 100 feet tall, and it's basically got 30 feet in girth. So this is up there with the California redwoods. And there are also really big ones in Kyrgyzstan. And there also are wonderful big walnut trees in Britain. Now, the bark is smooth, olive brown when young and silvery gray on older branches. And it has broad fissures with rough texture. Um, and what's interesting in the twigs, it has lots of air space. And the leaves are alternately arranged. They're odd pinnate. And it's a beautiful tree, I think. Um, as I said, these trees grow mostly in riparian zones, which basically means they need a good amount of water. And black walnut is more resistant to frost than the Persian kind. Now, black walnut is one of the most abundant trees in the eastern US, particularly in the Northeast. Now, something I find really interesting, quite proud as a former Californian, most of the walnuts grown for eating in the United States come from my beloved home state of California, hence the California Nut Commission. And there are all sorts of organizations. There's a California Walnut Commission and so on. And I do have a link in the program notes on everything you could possibly want to know about walnuts. And the California Nut Commission, I mean, they've got recipes and history and anything you want to know about walnuts. And that's what I always loved about all of these really cool organizations that surround certain plants. You can always have wonderful websites and great recipes. Now, walnuts are really quite nutritious. And for those of you who are like me, who get lost in the internet in terms of research, I mean, you just can go down the most amazing rabbit hole. There's so much information on the nutritional benefits of walnuts. And I'm going to read you a couple titles of studies that I found rather interesting, just so you know where your US tax dollars are going. And that thank goodness we have billionaires that want to stop this kind of research so that they can pay even less taxes on the government contracts they make their billions on. So the first study was called Correlation Between Intestinal Microbiota and Urolithin Metabolism in Human Walnut Dietary Intervention. Wow. And this was my one that's a big page turner. It's called Adolescence Dietary Patterns Derived Using Principal Component Analysis and Neurophysiological Functions, a cross-sectional analysis of Walnut Smart Snack Cohort. I would love to have been in the pitch meeting for that title. Now, these fancy titles of these research projects are basically saying that if you eat walnuts, it's good for your digestion and your nervous system. And it's basically because of the large amounts of antioxidants. We know antioxidants are just wonderful for all sorts of things, and omega-3 fatty acid contents. Now, modern diets based on industrially processed foods, meaning foods in packages that are full of preservatives, these types of foods tend to be very high in omega-6 fatty acids, but poor in omega-3s. And this imbalance causes all sorts of problems, ranging from skin and joint problems, as well as issues with your nervous system. So anything that has omega-3s and antioxidants help everything you can imagine. And so this is why eating walnuts on a regular basis will help you out. Eating walnuts also, according to the fancy title of a research article I just quoted, helps to promote a healthy gut. The walnuts are anti-inflammatory. They help to promote healthy blood sugar levels. So these are great foods for people trying to manage blood sugar as well as lose weight. And they're actually suggested for diabetes management. Obviously, you need to make sure you're not eating pounds and pounds of these things. But you can see from this wonderful graphic from Very Well Fit, and I have the link on the slide. It's a wonderful article on the benefits of walnuts. So you can see there's a lot of fiber, protein, not a whole lot of carbs, good fats, and they're just really good for you. Now, the medicinal action of walnuts has basically been used in numerous traditions because it grows all over the place. And it's mostly the bark and the leaves that are used for this, but obviously the nut is good for you as well. And if you use the bark and the leaves, these wonderful walnut products are alterative, which means basically nutritive, laxative. They help get things moving in the large intestine. They're purgative, which means it can help get rid of things like intestinal parasites and just get things moving in general. It's also a vulnerary, and the shells are used medicinally, and they're best used when green. And these are very antiseptic when used as a tea. And again, you have to do this when they're green, and you have to boil the tea for a little while. And you can just use it like as a skin wash or as a gargle. It's very antiseptic. Now, the oil of the nuts has been used traditionally medicinally to relieve colic internally. And externally, it's an emollient, which means it softens the skin and it's very, very soothing, and it'll make you smell really nice too. Now, because this wonderful species grows throughout Asia, it is used in traditional Chinese medicine. It's probably used in other types of medicine, but the Western herbalism and traditional Chinese medicine I am most familiar with. And this, if you want the botanical name for the medicine, it's basically a Semen jungalandis. And this is from the Regia species, which is also known as the Persian walnut. And the qualities are sweet and warm. They enter the kidney, the liver, lung, and large intestine meridians. And it's one of these interesting things in Chinese medicine and in herbal medicine in general, the concept of like cures like. And if you see, a walnut, it kind of looks like a kidney, and it does tonify the kidney. Because it's warm, it warms the yang, and it also because it's warm and sweet and emollient, it moistens the intestines. So the Chinese use this, as they do everything, in teas. And most of the teas in Chinese medicine are decoctions, which basically means they boil them before straining and then drinking the tea. And this is used in formulas for cough and dyspnea, which is a fancy word for difficulty in breathing. Uh, for lung and kidney deficiencies. There's soreness and a limpness in lumbar and knees. It's also used for constipation. And so you don't have to be really specific between Yugalens and Niagara if you want to use these herbally. But just an aside, in traditional Chinese medicine, the organs all have specific physiological functions. That's totally true. But they also have energetic qualities in the understanding of physiology and pathology. And the kidneys are seen as the anchor energetically for all the organs. And when the kidneys are weak, all sorts of issues result. With the heart, it anchors the heart. If it's weak, then you get palpitations, and if it also the kidneys anchor the lung, then the lung isn't anchored and it's difficult to breathe. And that's according to the diagnosis and the traditional Chinese medicine physiology. But what's interesting is if you do focus on the kidneys in terms of treatment, and this type of asthma due to kidney deficiency, you treat the kidneys, and I'm telling you, it actually helps. So if you or the patient you're dealing with is not allergic to tree nuts, walnuts are given as a nutritional prescription for people with this type of asthma. So again, you need a good diagnosis from an acupuncturist or Chinese herbalist, but this can really help in some cases of asthma. Now, the walnut, in addition to being used medicinally in Chinese medicine, is also used in nutritional therapy. And a lot of the qualities are very similar to the medicinal. It's sweet and warming. According to the food energetics, it's ascending, and it also moistens the lung, it moistens the large intestine, and it's used for cold type patterns of asthma and any type of cold pattern diseases. Now, I love to eat them. I've used them medicinally, but the one way of that I use a lot of walnut is through the Bach flower essence remedies. And again, the Bach flower remedies are essentially sun tea of whatever plant they're using. And it's the sun tea of the flower of the plant. And then it's preserved either in vinegar or in brandy. And walnut flower essence, I've had wonderful success personally as well as professionally with this essence. It's really good for times of major life changes and when children are teething, during puberty, any kind of change of relationship status, either getting married or getting divorced. It's really good for menopause. If you're moving or you have a new job, if you're breaking away from the old, um, it's really a wonderful, wonderful remedy. I've used it quite successfully for children who are coping with the arrival of new siblings. For those of you who are with young families, you know, no matter how much you love these new arrivals, it's a big change in the family dynamics. And it's usually pretty traumatic for the young children who are used to being the focus of the universe. And now they have to share. So I always recommend this is kind of like a pan family remedy. It's also good for children as they're starting to go to school because it's a big adjustment. Now, for adults, it's really good for if you get a new job or you have a new home, relationship issues. It's a wonderful remedy for that. Now, cooking with walnuts is wonderful, and it's good for savory and sweet. Um, because walnuts originated in Asia Minor, they're pretty ubiquitous in various cuisines around that region. You see it a lot in Turkish food and in Asian food. And the biggie is baklava, which is part of my Balkan traditions. And here in Bulgaria, baklava is made with walnuts and honey. And there's a lovely custom on Christmas Eve where the youngest child has a slice of baklava with a candle in it and goes outside to invite the Christ child into the home. And as I said before, Hanukkah foods, particularly in North America, usually reflect Polish, Russian, and German immigrant traditions. And one of the more delicious traditions is Rugelach. And Rugelach's history can be traced back to medieval times in Eastern Europe, especially with the Ashkenazi Jewish communities. And Rugelach is this wonderful pastry that originated in the Jewish communities of Poland, and it's very popular in Israel and among Jews around the world. What I also think is fun is Rugula has its own Wikipedia page. Now, for me personally, walnuts just make everything delicious. I love walnut pestos. Sometimes, pine nuts are either too expensive or just not available. And walnut with cilantro is quite yummy. And their walnuts are wonderful in both sweet and savory dishes. Walnut oil adds really amazing flavors as like a finishing oil to sauces. They're also fabulous in salad dressings. And I personally really like walnuts with beets. And I don't even know if this restaurant is still in existence, but it was in downtown Pasadena called the Market City Cafe. They had this wonderful salad bar that was basically an antipasto bar. And there was a beet, walnut, and gorgonzola salad that was just to die for. And it had like a tarragon dressing. It's amazing. Walnuts are also quite present in Chinese cuisine in things called congees, which are basically porridges. You put the walnuts in there. Shrimp and walnuts is a very popular dish. And walnut butter is also a delicious alternative to peanut butter. And as always, I have some wonderful links in the program notes for all sorts of recipes. Now, to grow walnuts, and this is apparently the largest tree in North America, and it's in Oregon. And that's a big daddy, if you ask me. Now, if you want to grow walnuts, I definitely encourage you to contact your local nursery or agricultural county commissioner, the agricultural extension. It's what they're called in the United States. In your area, if you would like to grow walnuts, because they will give you the best information on your local area. Now, I have never seen a walnut tree in a pot. I've never seen that. I think they do better mainly because they're such large plants just directly into the ground. These trees do need full sun, so keep that in mind. And check out the links in the program notes on anything to do with how to grow walnuts. So, however you choose to incorporate this wonderful, wonderful gift of nature, where every aspect of the plant is healing or gives shelter or is delicious, I hope that you can come to appreciate this wonderful gift from the natural world. And I also hope, whatever it is that you celebrate, that you have a delicious and healthy Christmas, a delicious and healthy Hanukkah, and a wonderful, peaceful, restful late December holidays. Now, I'm going to be taking a break for New Year's, and we'll be posting again starting the week of January 6th with all sorts of new initiatives for the coming year. Thanks again for your time. Until next time, next year, be well.